in between your brows. Then slowly breathing in, feel the life force streaming in. Hold it there, then send it back to him. All the old things are returning, cosmic circles ever turning. All the truth we've been yearning for, life is our savior, savior, savior. The river of living breath is flowing through the sun. He was there before the earth began. The world will drag on you, use his love to pull you through. Find the mission of your life and start to be. All the old things are returning, cosmic circles ever turning. All the truth we've been yearning for, life is our savior, savior, savior. There's one thing I can do, play my mellotron for you. Try to blow away your city blues. Your dreams are not unfound. Get your feet back on the ground. The truth will set us free. We cannot lose.
The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
All right, we are back and we are live, feet to the fire. I'm your host, James Othianchek, the Black Knight of talk radio. Whoops. I usually switch that off faster. And the loop there. Well, anyway, we are back and we are live. And some stuff to talk about today. I did some... I was actually off a couple days this week because I had work done on my truck. That's always a bad thing. I lose money and I pay money. And like many other times, which is why it's in a dubious life investment change, they did not finish the work started. I tell you, if someone ever wants to ask something like, what is, if you're going to go into being a truck driver in terms of being owner-operator, the two things that you need is good dispatching and a good mechanic, otherwise you'll go broke, and I'm on the latter end of that. So I'm looking at this. Okay, there we go. So, but I did have some time, and I ended up selfishly taking the time myself and going through my audio equipment and retuning it, and it was it's really nice. I'm really happy. I put some stuff on YouTube for tube amps. I don't have the tube amps with the actual power amps of stereo. I do have tube amps with my guitar and whatnot, but I love the tube amp aspect of it. And all I can have here is the Carver. Bob Carver made a tube transfer, as he calls it, system, where he is able to emulate tubes through solid state, as close as you can get. Anyway, I'm digressing and rambling on here, so let's get to the deal. Let me just go back to here, and let me hit the web page button. I'm going to scroll down here, have several things I want to go through. Interesting, if you recall, a while back there was a sailor who was tried, convicted, because he took pictures of a submarine and he had it on a cell phone. Apparently he did not share this with anybody, and he took pictures for, not that what he took was of some classified technology. It was general pictures, which is classified in and of itself. And he used the defense, Hillary inadvertently, as the FBI suggested, shared classified information. But she didn't intend to do wrong, according to Comey. And that didn't work, and they sent him to prison. Donald Trump pardoned him, and now he is suing. He's suing him for, I don't know what the legal term would be, unfair. You let this one off, but I don't know how that'll work, because I think you can selectively prosecute. It's been held up in Supreme Court in the past. Tommy Robinson had a big rally for Tommy Robinson in Jolly Old. Over in Jolly Old, you can see there's a video. It goes on for 2 hours, so I'm just not going to play that, but there you go. The camera doesn't show all of the crowd, but one of the speakers, I listened to a portion of it. Hey, Tommy Robinson. That was the thing that they talked about saying throughout there. But according to some of the speakers, there were thousands of people there. And I guess the goal is to have this continue so that and grow, so that this can't go away. And of course, the powers that be will just wait and see. They'll just say, well, let's see. They're mad now, but maybe it'll go away. And that's why you have to be relentless, because they are relentless. Like a dog waiting for rodent to come out of a hole. That you get Jack Russells here. They could sit there for the rest of their lives looking at that hole, waiting for it to come out. And that's how the powers that be are. They're relentless. And so if we're going to compete with their decrees, we're going to have to be relentless and have loud volume, have large numbers, and be consistent. Those are going to be the, hope anyway of them doing anything. Yeah, and I put down too that I put the Who, I Am Free, which is from the play, not play, now I'm drawing a blank, rock opera, apparently the first one written, rock opera of Tommy. And so I thought that would be kind of fitting. Let me cut to the big picture here. Now, one of the things that people get criticized for on the internet is accuracy and, is it a rumor? Is it true? Is it this? Yeah, I heard this, and people write stories and so on. But here's an example of the facts are, at least, that citizens will be getting fined. This is being ushered in. They'll be getting fined in California using more than 55 gallons of water, but Nestle pumped billions for free. The headlines tend to be, dramatic. Breaking news, and it's like, I sneezed, and stuff like that. So, but the Senate Bill 606, Assembly Bill 1666 into law, they both signed them. Both will set new standards of water management planning. Restrictions will take effect by 2022, limiting residents 55 gallons per person per day. That number will decrease to 50 gallons per person by 2030. So we are talking a few years out. But this is, of course, a good thing to do as far as gives time for people to complain. Not that they care about it, but it'll impose civil liabilities and violations in an order or regulation issued for 3 provisions specified. And it'll require a wholesale water supplier, urban retail water suppliers, or the distributor of public water to provide a monthly report relating to water production, use, and conservation. Interesting thing, an 8-minute shower uses about 17 gallons of water. A load of laundry up to 40 in a bathtub can hold 80 to 100 gallons, meaning that the people will have to give up a shower on days they do laundry, and then bath would be, impossible. Meanwhile, they're allowing Nestle and others to drain water from the reservoirs. And I don't know if it's free, but it's virtually free. Let's put it that way. I was looking for numbers that actually got to that. But this is a story, this whole idea of these people taking water out of the reservoirs is an old story. And one of the comments on my Facebook page mentioned, it's a good point, is that there's plenty of water, but it's not managed. I mean, if you were actually building reservoirs for water and you actually put effort into it, you can save a lot of water and whatnot. But it's just poorly managed. I mean, that's why, somebody from Canada said to me once about the healthcare system, and they said, if just a few % of my income tax, of my income, is used for the public health system and whatnot. And I said, let's just assume Canada does a great job at it. I mean, I've heard people varying levels of various no's and yes. It's not the ones that are here. Here, our government is bloated, bureaucrats, they pass more regulations, they fine, they're incompetent, they're lazy, they don't show up for work, there's ghost payrolls. I mean, this is the history of the American government. So anytime you're having life, and then if you put it in corporate hands, which is going to be more efficient, the whole point is profit. So you get gouged. You get the $300, toilet seat for NASA. Well, I understand that's a lot of ways they hide money in the budget, but nonetheless, whenever a company gives a deal, sends something to the government, they don't give a deal. Remember Donald Trump when he said he canceled the orders for Air Force One, and then all of a sudden they renegotiated and knocked off like $1 billion or something. So that's one of the problems when you have the government involved with anything. It's terribly run. A moment here on the this little deal, choosing an operating system for your computers or whatnot. You for technology, daddy? Yes. Is your daddy rich? Yes. Apple? No. You don't fear technology. Are you scared about freedom? No. Then you go to Windows. Go to Windows if you don't fear technology. I shouldn't say. I said Windows. I meant to say Android. And yes, do you have a life? Yes. And then there's these various various Linux and all that. And I wanted to bring that up for a point. One thing that people, let me look for here we go, Raspberry. Sister is into this, that's why I even know about it. But you see that little circuit board there? That's called a Raspberry Pi. I spelled it P-I-E, but it's P-I as in the mathematical symbol. And what this system is, been around for a while now, but it's getting more popular, at least I got to hear about it, is it runs on a Linux, various variants of Linux. And these little circuit boards kind of reminds me back in the Commodore 64 days where you can write your own programs and actually build peripherals around it. This is actually more for that. It's built for it. It's friendlier, and it's very, very, very affordable. But if you watch along the corner here, you see these various boards. You put these together depending upon what you want to do, and you can run, excuse me, you can run a home security system. You could run a media server. You could run all kinds of aspects of it. I'm looking to see what's going on up here. Okay. You can run a, like I said, multimedia server. You can run your cameras and record them. There's so many things you can do. You can run various detector circuits. In fact, there was one, my sister mentioned a guy programmed a bunch of these together to shoot a paintball gun at intruders in his yard. And it tracked using the, he bought infrared or whatever, ultrasound trackers that you can use for alarms. And by triangulating from these various trackers, it would move and move the gun and shoot him. And, you know, he did a YouTube video. I should have had that up there. I just thought of it now, where he was running through his backyard trying to race to get through without getting hit with the paintball. And the thing is just shoot him as he's running. So there's so many things you can do with it. And you know, it's like $30 or something for the board. I mean, it's a very, very inexpensive price. The operating systems that are out there, I believe, are free or close to it. So it's something, if you're a tinkerer, you know, if you've got kids who are interested in this stuff, or you yourself, I mean, if I had time, I'd like to tinker on this stuff. But I'll put a link up to the Wikipedia, and then you could branch off from there. But it's pretty good. My sister has hers set up for multimedia, so she could program through her. I think what happens, if I recall, she uses her regular TV to go into it. You know, there's a media screen, and then you can play music and whatnot. So there's all kinds of stuff. I wanted to bring that up there. In case you don't know about it, you might want to. And I think it's the future, because what people will be able to do is design their own gizmos using these deals, both at home, if you will, or for business. You can make, people can come to you and say, hey, I want to do this or that, and it can be done without spending a fortune. I think it's best for personal construction, but businesses can arise that will use this technology. It's non-proprietary, and it is open source. So this is, I got this out here somewhere. This is a very interesting picture. I believe this is Kim.com is the version that I have, but I believe it may have been tweaked out by Julian Assange, or maybe it was Kim.com being redone by Julian Assange. I've seen it two places. You can't really see it here, but you can go online and get it. But it ties in all the media individuals in the organizations, and they all, talk about 6 degrees of separation. They all hook up through the Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg, and the Council of Foreign Relations. Now, this is an old, quote, AM radio conspiracy theory. What is this? I don't know what's inside a Chrome box. I looked in the chat room. The last thing I was talking about. I have not dealt with that. So all these news organizations tie in with one of these three, and the latter two tie in to the Council of Foreign Relations anyway. Which the whole idea is more of a globalist type deal. I mean, we use the word globalist very glibly. There's people who say globalism is good. We're all getting together, working together, and helping one another. Globalism. And you could talk about globalism in terms of one world government, one world oppression. I'm not going to do this now. And so on, and which is where I tend to be in that camp, is that you can work with anywhere in the world and do business or have relationships. You don't need to have a world government system facilitating it, and actually more commonly suppressing individual relationships. So it's very interesting. I'd like to see this made in a poster. It would be good to have up on a wall, or you could turn around. I have a friend who's I guess you would call him a typical liberal camp, where they read the newspapers and feel that they're informed, but they're not getting other sides. They're getting, and they think because they have 5 newspapers and maybe a TV network here and there, that, I got all this diversity. Well, they're all on the same team, and that's where I become paranoid when I say these things. But this type of illustration to them would be like, well, so what? So that, but anyway, I wanted to mention that. I thought it was of value. Let me go back to my... Okay, I wrote this, and I wanted to explain this. Here's a homeschooling skyrockets as more parents are fed up with left-wing social engineering and violence in public schools. Now, I wrote this kind of a generality. A leftist generalization is to use public money. This is the kind of the, if you want to call it a stereotype that's thrown at the left. The rightist generalization is to keep your own money. Keep and use your own money. That's kind of the stereotype of the right. They want to cut taxes. They want to keep their own money. They're greedy. The left says they're greedy. The right says the left is taking money. So these are the general things. So it makes sense that public schools would be staffed by leftists, people who are being paid by the public. And the right would use homeschooling with their own time and money. The biggest difference is the leftists train students, the public students, what they want them to know or do, which is we'll call it generally a propaganda or a fiction. It is creating a worldview that has nefarious purposes underneath. Sounds good on top. Diversity, we're all together and all this stuff, but underneath it's because they want to keep you apart and they want to keep you down, not teaching you survival, how to do good in the world and so on. And the rightists train their own kids in what was, as far as history, what is reality, and what to do and how to do. And then I amended my own post and said, of course, the risk in teaching public or private is propaganda. But giving students the tools of critical thinking can allow them to verify and validate the teaching. The rightists tend to do this while the leftists tend to shun this. This is generalizations. But there are exceptions to all rules, and of course critical thinking itself can reveal these. So by teaching the kids critical thinking and to question things and why and look into it, it's a self-oiling system that will allow you to then to go in and listen to anybody on anything without blocking off sections of it, and then critically analyze what you're getting on there, look into more things here, more things there, whatever, and move on. And that's the grave, grave problem in the public school system, is the lack of critical thinking, the tools to do such. I'm lucky enough because of my age that when I went to public school, there were teachers who were into this. And I had an English teacher, and God bless her, she was still pretty young when I was in high school. I'm going to guess maybe in her 30s, so she might still be alive. I'd like to find her and thank her. But she had us do a multi-week project on propaganda and had us cut out newspaper clippings and magazines because she knew that no matter what magazine and newspaper you had, there's propaganda in it. You didn't have to go out and buy a stack of magazines. And we turned in the papers, and we were able to look for it. Now, because of that and growing from there, I sit and watch TV, and it's like, I guess it'd be like a person who's a producer of movies watching a movie and is seeing the building blocks inside the movie rather than enjoying the veneer surface. And so I look at these things and I see what the programming message is, I see what the techniques are being used and so forth, rather than just being mesmerized by the commercial or the propaganda in general, which also tends to aggravate people around me. So I threw this up there. It popped in my head, and I shared on air. Knowledge is acquired. If your eyes are open, your ears are open, and you're just kind of walking through life, you're going to acquire knowledge. You don't have to do much. It just comes. Truth, however, is sought. You have to actually seek truth. And by acquiring knowledge and seeking truth, you then develop wisdom. This is what I was saying on this. I can put that in my little book of sayings that I have. Another point I wanted to bring up is that this is where this whole sovereign citizen thing comes in. I've had people on Coast to Coast years ago. I've talked with them on Feet to the Fire radio years ago about this whole sovereign citizen, how you use the Constitution. I'm a sovereign citizen, blah, blah, blah. I don't need a license. I don't need to have insurance. I can drive a car without a license. I can make my own. And they go through life doing this. And I'm like, all that stuff could be true. It doesn't matter because the system that we are in does not recognize that. So in order to operate your car within the United States as a sovereign citizen and do business as a citizen, whatever that means. I've heard so many different things. You have to have the United States system accepting that. Otherwise, you get arrested for not following the program. Well, income tax is illegal. And I have heard stories of people going to great pains and winning in court, many not win in court, either by doing a mistake or they just get, so there's a problem with going that route. Not that I'm saying you shouldn't or whatever. My point is that just by saying, I don't know, I'm talking about an analogy. Just by saying that these things are true, it doesn't mean in practice that they're true. In the actual rubber hits the road reality, theoretically, and then there's the reality. And in this particular story is the question, can citizens form their own grand jury and indict politicians for criminal behavior? And what I was commenting on is that I see it in terms, in the terms define a grand jury, citizen or otherwise, whether it's a citizen grand jury that we convene, or whether it's a grand jury convened by DOJ or some local variant, cannot actually convict anybody. All they can do is call for investigation, which is what the U.S. District Attorney, whoever would do, special prosecutor, whatever. They would use the police, and they would follow investigation, police or FBI, depending upon. And then they would present this information to the grand jury, and the grand jury decides, yes, I think there may have been a crime here. We should go into it further, and they indict that person or that group or whatever on this. And then a real investigation with evidence and with trial would ensue with a criminal jury. This is, the program. So people were arguing in this article and the results of it. Well, is it legal in Constitution to do a citizen grand jury? You could do these things. In fact, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm a constitutionalist as a layman, and I'd say, yeah, you could do that. But the good question is, will the call by the citizen grand jury be acted upon by the state or federal prosecutors to investigate and try a case. Will they do it? As far as I understand, the authority is in themselves. They can't be mandated by a citizen grand jury to actually go and do this. They may agree. They may choose to. They may actually convene their own grand jury to verify or what have you. But it's not, to me, it seems that the actual prosecuting decision is in the prosecuting arm of the government, the Department of Justice, Attorney General, working downward, state's attorney, county, and so forth. So that is the argument: is do they have to answer this? Because one of the arguments people said is you can have a bunch of people get together and convict, not convict, but I should say indict your neighbor because he's a pain in the ass. And but the point is they can't convict him of nothing. It's not like a lynch mob. They could put it before and have it, and then say, okay, so the state's attorney, the county, however it works, convenes investigation and says no. There's no, or they convene a trial and they're innocent because the evidence is not there. I would like to see that. I would like to be able to see people organizing like that and then bringing it to a general. But as we're seeing with Department of Justice, FBI, with Trump and whatnot, we're not talking about people who are out to find truth and legal and constitutionality and whatnot. Next thing here is Saddam. Assange has tweeted out, or actually it's a group campaign to free Assange tweeted out, someone is very scared of Julian Assange. Number one, the U.S. House of Representatives Committee is blocking him from talking to Congress, and the UK Foreign Office is blocking him as well. So he's mentioned he wants to testify, and they're blocking him from testifying. This is, to me, why they want to get him as well as Snowden, is these people have facilitated the release of stuff that made the deep state, now called deep state, but the government's, embarrassed of how evil and bad and intrusive they are. Let me go to the big screen on this one. I got a video. This is blowing my mind. I'm watching this stuff. And, you talk about hurricanes and you talk about tornadoes. And, yeah, a tornado, I think a tornado could land next door to you and not touch you. But it is very destructive. Hurricanes are large areas. But I'm watching this lava come out. And this stuff is rolling for miles. I mean, all the black that you see is either cooled or less hot lava that is leaked out. This is how it was, right? This is going for miles. Excuse me. Now, think about this stuff. The lava come out of there, and it went for miles, like a river. Of up to 8,000 degrees is the maximum, I guess, theoretical temperature of lava. And it just goes out, just kind of roams down the hill, and it's simply gravity. Just like a water, just like a river. The river is because the water goes down where gravity allows it to, and here we go. Simple gravity. Of course, lava is so hot it can cut channels. Well, I guess water does too over time, depending upon the soil and all that. But this stuff just rolls over. And they showed, I don't know if they're going to show it here. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay. But I don't want to get into people talking. But what they've done is you've had individuals who were taking video just by their own houses. Here, this is good. This is the one I'm looking at. Oh, no, I'm not going to do it, huh? Yeah. This is like going down the street. I don't know if this is the one. Yeah, that's a, look. Here's your street, and there's this lava coming down, and it happens to stop. I mean, it's just blowing my mind. And I'm watching this stuff. Just trying to look at this stuff. A lot of this stuff is. I mean, just think about that. You can't do nothing about it, and they're not showing the one I want where it was just like gel. You know, this is real liquid. It was just gel, just kind of inching forward. You know, then it would be black on top. I can't. I'm not going to be able to find the neighborhood ones. I don't know. I'm looking for a cell. Here we go. No, maybe not. Look at this stuff. Just comes in. Just rolls in like nothing. Rolls in the neighborhood. You can't put anything up. You can't put up a fence. You can't put up brick walls. It melts brick. You put up a metal barrier, it melts the metal. There's nothing you can do about it. So it's just blowing my mind. And I'm not trying to get away from the human element here, but I'm just trying to mention that. Wow, it's just blowing my mind. You know, here's Hawaii, which is the vacation home, a paradise, and whatnot, and here it is. So now I want to mention too, I got a call from the RNC looking for money, and it was a live call for a change. All right, here we go with the sneezing again. Excuse me. And I gave him an earful. I don't know, maybe I'm getting the allergy it kicks in. There's some kind of pollen coming up now. And I gave him an earful. I said, it's great that they got rid of the Obamacare mandate, but all that did was allow. All it did was allow people to either not have insurance or have insurance with no break in the pay and the cost. My insurance would have went up 29% this year, but my employer opted in the group plan to reduce coverage. It only went up 9%. So I pay $800 plus per month for one person. So I said, why couldn't you pass the Obamacare repeal like you did under Obama? When... Come on. Under Obama, when you could have actually passed it, and they wouldn't do it. I said, how about actually supporting the Republican president instead of opposing him nearly at every turn? I voted for him because of his plans, not your non-plans. The Democrats are lockstep against him, and many of you guys are helping him. Gosh. McConnell, Ryan, and so forth. I voted a straight Republican ticket for one reason, to support the president's plans. Many of you are opposing him. Shame on you. Of course, he just waited, ignored my comments, and went back to his place in his sales pitch. So, whatever on that. Also, as a quote I took. I'm sorry about that. There's a story. At least 110 Confederate monuments have been taken down since 2015. That's a One American News story. Granted, One American News Network, you're not going to get these stories in the main legacy news. And this is like a mainstream news service. It's on cable and whatnot. But as a quote from George Orwell in 1984, every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present, which the party is always right. Well, here we go. How many years ago was that? 30s? And here it is 50-some years later. Well, I say 50. Till 1984, it's 50-some. So there's a point. Saul Alinsky and the Rise of Amoral in American Politics. Very good read. Talking about the guy who comes up with all these. It's all the stuff that's happening. All the little plans, all the little stuff going on is all part of this. It's right there. You read his writings and you see exactly what's happening. Let me get to the CERN thing at the end. I talked a little, nice stuff about vacuum tubes. And I wonder, I have a solid state is a microvoltage, and the microvoltage controls the macrovoltage, but tubes use macrovoltage, or at least traditionally. I mean, they are using DC powered tubes. But to me, it seems like there's a life force, like electricity to me is some kind of like the blood of the universe. The lifeblood of the universe is electricity. And we're using electricity in this. And it just seems that when it comes to music, there seems to be digital is a non-related, static, removed copy, whereas the analog process is as it's making an analog copy through each medium. Sound hits the speaker, it moves the magnet, the coil over the magnet, creates a current. That current then comes onto moves on the tape, makes a magnetic current on the tape, or a groove in the record, or what have you. And in digital, it just smashes it up into, 92 or CDs are 44.1 thousand numbers per second, and then DVDs and Blu-rays are higher. And the DVDs, it sounds good. I'm sorry, I should hit the button. It sounds good, right? You listen to Blu-ray and it sounds great. I mean, I have stuff here. It sounds wonderful, but I think this is what they're looking for to do with the robots, is to take the analog life of the human being and digitize it into a mechanical process, digital process. And since the sound from music does come through and survive, if you will, the end result, but if you'll notice in the middle, the actual analog signal is completely and utterly destroyed and stored in a completely unrelated format, so that the liveliness, the analogicness of it is destroyed, and then it's reformed and another analog signal is created. Though if you look very closely at it, even at the high ratio, it's going to be a stair step as opposed to a smooth. So my question is that, do you think that the human life would survive being digitized, with your soul, with your personality? You're listening to me right now. That person who's listening to me now, how do you know that person who's listening will still be, it'll be you listening after you're reformed again, Even if they did it where they can come up with a reasonable facsimile, because all analog recordings, even though they're keeping the same analog flow, if you will, the result of the pressure of, it's still a copy, it's still a representative, it's an analog, it's not a direct thing. And digital actually has a wall that you have to go through and be reassembled. Definitely, Scotty beam me up scenario here. If you could beam somebody up, would that be the person you're beaming again? Would that consciousness continue? And I say no. I haven't. I don't know this. It hasn't been done experientially, but it makes sense. So I don't know. I may have more of a spiritual, emotional relationship with tubes than reality. All right, I'm going to do this here. Believe me, you didn't want to hear that. Jack Persobic, who, by the way, who's been talking on One American News, been doing reports on there. This was when it came out. He reported the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 in favor of the Christian baker who declined to bake a cake for a gay couple. The court found that the Colorado violated the baker's religious rights. And the Supreme Court also noted that the baker also refused to make cakes with anti-gay messages, criticizing God, or containing alcohol. So he was consistent in his here we go. So now, interesting enough, a lot of reports said that the Supreme Court rules narrowly in favor of the Christian baker. Now, if you're talking about this and you hear rules, well, what does that mean? Does that mean 5-4? You know, it sounds to me narrowly, right? Well, 7-2 is a couple steps removed from that. So I'm wondering that if they were to defend that inaccurate statement, they would refer to narrowly being used as an adjective describing their point of their political point of view. Narrow-minded, in other words, as opposed to open-minded. Now this baker is bankrupt in his legal fees, and perhaps he can resue back some of the places in there. So we have America where you could go to the Supreme Court, provided you can afford to do it. If not, you're just SOL. Now, of course, this has popped up many times. By me saying this, of course, puts me in some kind of a white supremacist which is not true. I'm like, I don't care what color you are. You know, I'm an American in the principles contained by the starting of the country, and that's what I would like you to be, regardless of where you came from or what your color is. So, but it doesn't matter, because I will criticize and use the term black pride, gay pride, and white pride being okay. Asian pride and white pride is considered be a neo-Nazi. You know, there's not being fair there, because I would criticize that. Well, it's because I'm a neo-Nazi. Okay, I gotta. Now, I didn't have it on my list here, but people were talking about this guy who committed suicide, this baker, and somebody had a tweet out there that said, I'm going to get to my main point in a minute. They had a tweet out there and said that he said, I got things to put Hillary in prison, and then he committed suicide. I don't know if that's a legitimate tweet. People have been making up tweets now and, all this nonsense rather than just. So I don't know if that's true. If he was suicided, in other words. But, Robin Williams got mixed into this conversation. It was on Dr. Rita Louise's page. If you want to look this up, I'll find it, put the links, rather than look for it here. And I brought up the point that they brought up, Robin Williams. And the thing with Robin Williams was, they found a couple of antidepressant medicines in him, and he was being treated for Parkinson's. Now, my sister has brought this up, and I have since posted it, and I will have to find this and repost it now that I think about it. I should have done that. It's echinacea. Is the echinacea, Akanisia, I think. And it is the idea of that you have this internal movement. When you have a Parkinson's person, they are involuntarily moving, right? In echinacea, you have the feeling inside, and you move voluntarily, which appears to help in some degree of that movement. And so what ends up happening is, if you have what has happened is people have antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs have caused damage to the nerves, resulting in echinacea, which, as I mentioned, it has restless leg syndrome, for example, is a very small type of it. But it has you moving around. You can't stop moving around, because when you sit still, inside it's just, I can't take it. Oh, you got to move around, It's not involuntary movement. Also, what you can have in echinacea is you feel like you're on fire. You are in severe terror. I mean, like, severe terror of the worst horror movie, and you're in this for like hours or days, nonstop. Now, there isn't terror. And again, just like you cannot move, the emotion or the nervous condition inside, the nerves, they force you to move to release this buildup. The same thing happens when you have these things. So, in talking about Robin Williams, and I don't know if this gentleman, it just sparked because he committed suicide, and there was people were talking about antidepressants. So whenever you have somebody committing suicide, you have to look at almost all of these individuals are going to be on antidepressants or anti-anxiety drugs because they go to a doctor. I have this severe depression. I want it's not worth living or whatever. They put them on these drugs, just like that. And so the problem is you don't have like A-B comparison. How many people who don't take the drugs or say are treated by cannabis or some alternative treatment versus how many people who do take the drugs, how many of them commit suicide? And, people, there's all kinds of different things in their lives, so it's hard to have a lab A-B comparison, but that's what you need to do. And I think you'll find that the antidepressants and anxiety drugs are causing a lot of trouble. And I can't speak to with the ratio between help and hurt or help and nothing and hurt. But given the fact that whenever you hear somebody committing suicide, they're saying they're depressed, and some loved one will say, yes, they were on medicine. Now, Robin Williams was taking a type of Parkinson medicine. So maybe the attempt of taking the Parkinson was to treat the involuntary movement, which if you don't move around, it's very upsetting. And he took that as Parkinson was trying to treat the Parkinson. You know what I'm saying? So, unfortunately, we'll never get the answers to these questions, at least currently, because nobody wants to know the answers to things. They want their system to be what's true. You're not going to look into Bible history or Bible reality or what influences may have been there. You're not going to look into, Saul Alinsky, in the left, or you're not going to look into greed. You're not going to look into if you're in medicine, this big thing, because you can't question the drug companies because they run medicine. Nobody wants to know the reality of it. So here we are. We're finding out the reality. We're finding out, knowing the difference between good and evil, between reality and fantasy, between I want to make you do what I want versus us working together to help one another. And when that happens, when you force someone to do something that you want, you're making a non-reality. I mean, it's real in that you're forcing them with some tool, whether it be a beating or blackmail, and they're doing it. But the reality would be that they would be helping you, and you'd be working with them. That's the reality. The false reality is you're being forced and made to. And when you have this, and most of it has to do with propaganda and being coerced, that what evil is working on here, and it's being successful, is they want us to willingly go into evil, either, ultimately to partake in its creation and in its propagation, but at least as a slave, at least as a duped participant. And this is what the whole origin of evil is, to make the person choose evil or be fooled into choosing evil, either way. And then once that fooled person is exposed, then they go, hey, you've been doing it all this time. Oh, too bad. You've been doing it, so you might as well come through. There's all this type of stuff. And that's what it goes on. So now let me finish up here. As far as I know, there's no Less Visible today. I haven't heard from him. I'm checking email as we speak here, as I speak anyway. You might be speaking at home, yelling at your... Okay, so I don't see you Less Visible. But I do have a point here. CERN. Do I have this? Here we go. China. Let me go back to the web page and let me go to the main page. No, China is building its own version of CERN, twice the size and 7 times more powerful. If you type in CERN in the YouTube, you'll find enough time to bury yourself for the next year in videos on CERN. The problem is that a lot of the stuff in there are, let's say, assumptions. And, of course, CERN doesn't help by having some people putting on these rituals and whatnot to, if nothing else, fuel or inflame those thinking there's something going on, like opening a portal to hell or whatnot, which, I'm not going to say is not possible. But I'm not going to say that's what it is. I'm not going to say the point of CERN is to go in and open a portal to have demons come in. I mean, I can't say that. I'm not going to not say that. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm not saying it's not the point. It's just that what we've gotten to, at least on the internet, and well, for that matter everywhere, is people just come up with an idea, and then they start looking for things to support it. And this now has a life of its own. And I don't like that. I mean, I think that you should research things and come up with evidence that will create this, not even a narrative, it creates this formula. And from there, you start to, you keep looking into it. As data comes in that's contradictory, it's important. You got to kind of work it into. You're like, okay, what is this, and reshape the model. So rather than create a narrative or design a narrative and look for points to, which is what, everything from churches to politics to, the companies. I mean, the point is when these narratives stray from reality enough to cause a problem, like if you think you can fly and you jump off a building and die, when you become that head on with reality, there's a problem. But I want to think about something in a very logical manner. Excuse me. Throughout history, humankind has invested into technology. Let's throw war in there, and let's throw like the moon and all this stuff. All the technological advancements had as its first fruit power. And what I mean by power is, if the U.S. made it to the moon first, they would have political power from that. As a result from the moon investigation, technological breakthroughs, a lot of circuits and all this stuff came from there. Now, I'm not even going to go into the alien re-engineering and all that. Let's just leave that alone. Because, again, I'm trying to just come up with a logical following historical perspective. There is a reason other than science, knowledge, for these advancements, and it all seems to be about power in some way. And I mean control, power, money, would be like riches, which can buy power, or military hardware, which can build power, business relationships, and so on, which makes one, whether it be computer power, all this power stuff, the chips. Who controls the chips, who writes the chips, who can break into the chips, has power. This is all power related. Computers are getting faster, more complicated, and one of the things that are happening from that, besides buying new computers all the time, you make the software more powerful, and it can do more things, and it gives money to the person. If the computers were infinite or a certain level, and the software you wrote ends, that's the end of the company. It's got to be bigger, faster. There's many ways to look at it. So now enter CERN. And this China is even worse, this China one. CERN is the largest machine and the most expensive machine ever built by humanity in the in the known history of the world. It is the most expensive and the largest, using tens of thousands of people to build and maintain it. And the stated purpose from CERN is to accelerate particles fast enough so that they're approaching the speed of light, but they're going opposite directions, right? And so they can direct the particles to hit each other, each coming at each other almost at the speed of light. So you're without getting into a lot of Einsteinian physics here, you're making actually collide each other with the inertia of faster than, high, almost twice the speed of light, even though they're not actually going twice the speed of light, so that they can break them apart into its most fundamental parts and learn what those are. That's it. The largest, most expensive machinery in history of the humankind. Not the stealth bomber, not spaceships to go out. This is the largest machinery, most expensive, most intricate, most complicated. The picture you see there, just one little slice, and there's like miles of those things. And the whole goal is to learn about these particles. And it's like from looking at history and looking at the money and technology investment, it's never been for knowledge. Understand things. They broke the atom and got energy from breaking the atom, and they built a bomb. First thing out, And look they still have new bombs. They made them break better, bigger, better, cleaner. They get off the radiation sooner so that people can come in and move in a town, in the city that they've obliterated without blowing down the buildings. I mean, all they did was get more efficient on it. With the nuclear power that's being generated is being done because it's once the building is built, which is what happened in Illinois anyway. We the people built the buildings and then gave them the ComEd just so they wouldn't raise their rates for 10 years. They gave them billions of dollars. So now they control it, and they raise the price up just underneath market, what the market will bear, and make pile of money. So there we go. It's not about providing power, clean power for people. It's making money. So now you have China looking to build their own version of CERN, twice the size, the largest, most expensive machine built by humanity, times 2. It's 7 times more powerful. Why? So they can find more particles that are smaller than what CERN can see. When CERN breaks those particles up and they get the nuons and ooons and quarks and quacks and quicks and all those things, and they look down to the, quote, guard particle, which is, I've heard it designed that mathematically that particle existed, but they couldn't prove it in the real world, so they believed it on faith, to the actual people saying that that particle would be the basic for creating. Well, so what does this mean? You can make more of them? And this is where I get my point. And, of course, I just read the details that this CERN, this China CERN is going to be done in 2040. 2040. So somebody in China is planning on being around in 2040, not having a nuclear war. So I don't think there's ever be nuclear war, because it would be utter destruction. And, even though they have underground facilities, it's not exactly number 1 on the list. It's on the bottom. Anyway, so my whole point is I would submit, based on this historical perspective, and without getting too metaphysical on it or conspiratorial in terms of opening up dimensions and whatnot, I think one can assume that there is a power-related approach to a CERN. And I actually, a book I read by Dan Brown, in that book, and I cannot remember the name of it, in that book, some guy, they were creating antimatter in CERN. This is one of the secrets, so to speak, purposes of it. They're creating antimatter, which would be the most powerful, most efficient power source, in the positive universe. And so he stole it, and they were going to blow up something, blah, blah, blah. So either CERN's goal is to come up with creation of antimatter, which would have the same kind of power, say nuclear power would have, in that it can blow up stuff very great and very efficiently. I mean, you can have yourself a little capsule of it, break the little capsule, a magnetic capsule of some type, and break it and have it blow up a city, right? Also, you'd be able to produce huge amounts of conventional energy. In other words, heat, or pressure, which would turbines and whatnot, from incredible small amount. But then it takes antimatter would be like the most precious substance in the universe because of the cost to make it. Or perhaps there's something else. The idea being is they could restart a different evolutionary path in the creation of particles. All of those things having a nefarious power thing. And if it means open up portals and whatnot, I mean, it could. But my whole point is you don't have to go that far to see severe, nefarious, problematic problems with it. And the fact that China is going to spend this much money, and China, you may think China has a lot more money than the U.S. economy, and they're doing everything's made in China, so therefore they got their own problems there too. They got entire cities. Nobody lives in them because nobody can afford to buy it. But there's all kinds of problems in China too. For them to put this kind of money out and to plan it out to 2040, I mean, that tells you there's something going on. And like nuclear war is not one of them. And I think nuclear war is the scare tactic. It probably has been since it was invented. It's the scare tactic to keep everybody all worried. And I came out on air mentioning that there was not going to be nuclear stuff with North Korea. It was saber rattling, and something happened. There's a little hidden secret. Something happened that all of a sudden he just, this very bold, brass guy decides to destroy his own stuff. Like, oh, no. So, I guess we'll never know that story, but something came in behind my guess, if I can throw out a guess, not meant to develop into a narrative, is that they did something to either themselves by accident destroyed a huge part of their nuclear capability it would take them decades to replace, or it was destroyed by some technical, ray. What's that ray? Direct energy weapon or something or other, and collapsed their underground facility. So either way, that's the point there, and it basically was just trying to get in the club with a big stick. But I'm worried about a CERN, and I don't really think about the portals and whatnot. But I think the rush here is the new nuclear race. It's the new everyone tries to get a nuclear facility, have nuclear weapons, and now they're at the table with nuclear weapons. Well, there's something that's being created from here. I'm going to just guess and say, antimatter. Let's just say antimatter or alternative matter, which then has alternative properties which will allow something, whatever that might be. That's as far as I'm willing to go, and it's bad enough without bringing up dragons and demons. Problems in Bitcoin, and for the life of me, let's go out for the year, right? Here's the look at Bitcoin from a year ago. It went up to almost 20,000, and now it crashed and rebounded and crashed. Now it looks it looks like it's on a downward trend. It is, but that's from a year. But when you get into a day, we had this boom. Now the part that I get is look at Ethereum. Pretty much the same deal, and Litecoin the same deal. Now how is this possible? How does all of a sudden Bitcoin crash? These all crash when they don't have anything really related with Bitcoin other than this artificial system of speculation, and the price goes down from 7,200 to 6,600 in an hour. And and it does go up too when it's go out for like a month. It started to look, it builds, it's up and down, but it's still going up. It still was on an upward trend. Now I'm concerned it's on a downward trend. Me personally, I know he talks about the Bitcoin going to be, 500,000 and all that. I think those days are long gone. I think it could have been, but I think this crash ended the possibility of Bitcoins and all that going up that high. It's who knows what the future far enough out. For me, if I can just get it back up a little bit, if I can get it up into, say, 12, in the 12,000 range, I'm done. I'm done. I got too many bills. Plus Lionel Parkinson, I got those links. Deutsche Bank again is, let me look it up for my, I think I spelled it wrong. But Google, stock. It did go down. You see, you notice now it's on a micro scale because it went down to 11.25, and here we are now at 11.26. Here it is now at 4.14. So it went from $11.14 and it rose up to $11.29. We're talking, that's not a rise. That's not a rebound of a couple of cents. We're talking penny stock type of thing in a deal. And let's go out again. Here's the schedule up here. $120. I can't get it. I can't. The 120 down to 26, and now we're back down. We're down to 11. So not good. Recommendation. Lionel talking basically said, hey, if I were you, this is what I would do, and I would get out of any longs. I would sell all stock and get out on the long side. You can get in on the short side with ETFs if you like, but get cash as much as you can and stuff it in the old mattress, because when this bank crashes, and just look at that scale. Take it out 5 years, right? However you want to look at it, take it out 1 year. So it's going, and it goes. It's I think what has happened is because of Dodd-Franks and whatnot, the banks are now all fictional. They're based in like their actual worth is like a fictional number. Yeah, it might be. There's talk with Donald Trump had mentioned about him legalizing marijuana, or at least that was that was what was taken from his talk on that, and the stocks would go up on that, and weed and whatnot. But I want it legalized for one reason. I think if you smoke pot to get high, you're abusing the purpose of the drug, right? And I'm not saying that should be legal. I don't care what you do, right? But the cannabis, oil and whatnot, the various oils that are found in cannabis have very good health stuff, and I think that if it was actually given a chance to be tested and whatnot, the problem is there's no way profit. You can't do it. You can't take. You have to make it genetically modified in order to patent it, and that's why genetically modified stuff is around. You can patent it if you just take regular old weed and you come up with a way to process it to distill out. You have to patent that process, or you're all that research is gone. It's unfortunate. It's the way it is, though. So yeah, and also C60. I would have to do a show on that C60. I still haven't bought it. I talked about it 2 years ago with Richard Miller, and I went into this whole surprise. I saw the whole work done in Russia when they did these things with rats, and it 2.5 times their lifespan. One of them, they stopped the project, and the thing was still alive. Just huge life extension on this. And, so yeah, C60, I'm going to have to do something about that. I think that's it. I think I'm going to call it a day here. So I want Bitcoin to go back up, say, to 12. Please. I don't know if that's asking too much. Maybe if it gets up to 10, and I'm done. I'm done with all crypto stuff. Cryptos have a history. In fact, some of the arguments I have with, not arguments, discussions I have with Lionel is that he thinks that all, whether it be Bitcoin, gold, all of those commodities, when the crash hits, people are going to need cash, short-term cash. They're going to sell this stuff, going to drop the price dramatically. But on the backside, things still have a history. Bitcoin may be a place that bankers want to place their money while the crash happens, in which case Bitcoin will rise. But if I, I'm trying to deal. I had a couple bad years in business here, and I'm running a little red here. So I need this stuff to try and work stuff out. But if I didn't, I could just let it ride, especially for the price I paid for it. And who knows what it would be in several years. But well, anyway, I don't want to. I'm down, just rambling, and people like okay. So glad to be back live. I have to work at a decent time tomorrow. I'm really happy I got the music stuff. I listened to some Moody Blues stuff and with the sound and all that I got here. It's really a nice system I got, considering what I have to work with money-wise. I got a lot of stuff that's multi-$1,000 stuff. I got it for a couple $100 because it's old, but it's good. Good stuff that's old still works, and it just works great. And so I've been pretty happy about that, and I did some retuning. The only thing I got that's kind of new is the Emotiva. Oh, you can't see it here. Emotiva preamp. It's all digital, right? So it doesn't have any, but it's pretty high class. That whole company they got together, a bunch of engineers got together to make high quality stuff and try to keep the price down. Well, that was $2,000, but I got it like $400 because the new one come out for $2,000 and the guy was selling it. Yeah, I don't have any. People just said no list visible. I don't have. Les didn't respond here, so I'm hoping things are okay. He hasn't responded. He's broke his leg, and rushed to the hospital and stuff. So I hope it's all right. I hope he just had like one day I forgot what day it was. And I'm hoping that's the kind of thing for his health's sake or whatever. So yeah, the opening buffer, I'll have to put that in. Music buffer was Mike Pinder. Oh, let me say something quickly about Mike Pinder. Mike Pinder is the keyboardist of Moody Blues, the original Moody Blues. They broke up in late 70s, and he was the keyboardist. He went back to the original Moody Blues before Justin Hayward and John Lodge, and with Ray Thomas. And, well, they split up, but there was some kind of problem between him and Graham Edge. He said something. He said one time in an interview, he said, hey, they're arguing. He goes, your point doesn't, kind of, you're just a drummer or something. Well, when they reformed in 1980, I went to see him, and it wasn't Mike Pinder. It was Patrick Morez. And when I bought the album Octave, there was a song, One Step Into the Light, which is what you heard, only you heard his version of it. But it didn't sound like his keyboards when I thought about it. So what it was is that song was already recorded, and then they worked it up for that album. Put him on the album, put it out there, but he didn't tour. So it ended up at that point on, from 1980 onward, no Mike Pinder in the Moody Blues. And that's sad because he's my favorite guy, and most of the songs I like, Ohm, Threshold of a Dream, Sunset. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them that he wrote that they never played live, never will, and it's done. Well, they were inducted into the Hall of Fame a few weeks ago. And Mike Pinder shows up with the band. They're all standing there for the first time on stage together since the 70s. The drummer, complete cold shoulder to Mike Pinder. Just, Mike is kind of hugging him. He wants to make stuff up, and he's just ignoring him. Well, every one of them talked, and when Mike was going to talk, they said, no, wait a minute. They had Graham Edge talk twice, the drummer. Everybody else talked, and then they all walked off the stage, and Mike Pinder didn't get to say anything. And when they performed, they had their current touring act. Mike Pinder had nothing to do with it. Shame, shame, shame on all of them for that. And so I played Mike Pinder's version of One Step in the Light because I don't know what the copyright rules are going to be on this because he's his own record label. But when you go back and listen to the Moody Blues, all the instrumentation in there, all the keyboards, all the oboes, the sounds, all this stuff are all his Mellotron, which he helped develop to the company. And he has a couple of solo albums out. One was from the 70s called The Promise. And then Among the Stars was his last actual work that came out in, I think it was in the late 2000s, probably, 2000s. Great. I actually got a signed album from it, as well as the CD. And it's good stuff. And he's got a song on there. Among the Stars is a poem, just like the Old Mooney Blues, and then he's got this big thing at the end. It's really great. Great stuff. So shame on them for pushing out Mike Pinder because, as what it is with most movie stars and rock stars, they think that they're the greatest things on the earth, but they made a good product and we bought it, and that's why they have all that money. Not the good product, we bought it. No, they made a good product, and I give them credit for that, and I like them for that, and I don't begrudge them the money, but when you get to be that arrogant, then, well... But anyway, that's that, and here we go. Boom.